All right, greetings YouTube. This is Beautiful Mind. So this question comes in on, let's see, it says use a sketch to find the exact value of the following expression. So in class, we made a statement that said anytime we do an inverse trig function, we need to be clear about the domain and range, okay? So the sketch that they're referring to is the following. So if we think about the original graph of cosine, right? So let's just do a quick sketch. Right? So here's our xy coordinate plane. Now cosine we restricted from 0 to 180, or 0 to pi. So pi is here, so this is pi over 2. This is the origin. Say this is 1, and this is negative 1, right? So then the original graph of cosine of theta, cosine of 0 starts at 1, then it drops to 0, then it drops to the minimum, right? So this is the original graph of cosine. So that means that if we think about cosine of theta, the restriction we put on the domain, we say that we restrict it from 0 to pi, and we use square brackets. And then the range goes from negative 1 to 1, right? So if that's the original, then when we do inverse cosine of y, this is now our range, and this is our domain. All right. So now that we're clear about the domain and range, first thing we look at, we ask ourselves, is the negative 1/2 in the domain of inverse of cosine? Well, yeah, it's like right in here, okay? Because the domain for inverse cosine is negative 1 to 1. So then whenever we get our answer needs to be between 0 and 180 or 0 and pi, okay? So now, if we look at inverse cosine of a negative 1/2, this is equal to, say, theta or x. So what this means is that cosine of what angle equals a negative 1/2. And keep in mind, our answer has to be between 0 and 180, right? So now if we think about the unit circle, cosine of what gives us a half? Let's do a quick sketch of the unit circle. So say this is the first quadrant. This is our 60 degrees, our 45 degrees, our 30 degrees. Remember, it goes, all the denominators are 2, right? It goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then take the square root of all the numerators. That's the quadrant 1 answer. Okay, so now cosine of what angle? And this goes cosine theta, sine theta. All right. So cosine of what angle is a half? So 60 degrees. So we need to be 60 degrees away from the x-axis, but we have to be between 0 and 180, so 60 degrees gave us a positive 1/2. Since we want the negative 1/2, that means we need to be 60 degrees away from the x-axis in quadrant 2. So 180 minus 60 is 120 degrees, okay? So that means that theta should be 120 degrees. So that's like 60 degrees away in quadrant 2. That should give us our negative 1/2. The output is between 0 and 180, okay? So everything has to add up. So then if theta is 120 degrees, just convert that to radians. Three pi, no. 2 pi over 3. So now, when you take the inverse cosine of a negative 1/2, we should get 2 pi over 3. So let's back to the beginning. So now we have sine of inverse cosine of a negative 1/2. But we said that the inverse cosine of negative 1/2, so then that's going to be sine of 2 pi over 3. But then that should be the same as the sine of, what do we say, 120 degrees? So basically it's like the sine of 60, and so 60 degrees. If we're 60 degrees away from the x-axis, the answer should be root 3 over 2. Sine is our y, and y is positive in quadrant 2, so it should be the positive root 3 over 2. Now how can we confirm this? Now I do have a graphing calculator, so let's use it to confirm. Let's confirm it in our graphing calculator. Okay, so let me reload and refresh, make sure it's working. Okay, so what I'm going to do, mode. We're already in radians, so I'm going to leave everything in radians. So I'm going to say sine of inverse cosine of a negative 1/2. I should get a positive result, some decimal. Okay, and then if I say the square root of 3 over 2, we should get the same decimal. Okay, so then let me just go to Pearson real quick. I can get it to work back properly. And we said square root of 3 over 2. Let me just check it here. Hopefully I didn't lose it. I think this is the same. So let's go here. And we want to say square root of 3 divided by 2. All right, we got it correct. All right. Okay. So with that, we will end the session here.